Little or No Cash, and co-author of Black Faces and White Places, 10 Game-Changing Strategies to Achieve Success and Find Greatness, which was named one of the best books of 2010. Most notably, he was the first and only African American to receive the Can anybody else hear that feedback?
Mm-mm.
Nope. Okay, hold on. Sorry for that. I'm going to repeat that one more time. Sorry about that. Where did we go here? Okay, most notably, he was the first and only African American to receive the prestigious Rhodes Scholarship at Rutgers University and was the winner of NBC's hit reality TV show, The Apprentice, with Donald Trump. And before we get into everyone's introductions, which we'll do in just a moment, I just want to run through some ground rules real quick. So I think I violated one of my first ground rules, which was that I shouldn't have the live platform open at the same time, because I think I was hearing my feedback from that, even though I thought I had muted it. So don't make the same mistake that I did. Also, welcome Thomas, who I believe just joined us as well. The second thing is that everybody is going to be muted throughout the talk today until they speak up and converse back and forth. And we're only doing this because the feedback can often be very distracting for people, which is what just happened for me. And then the other ground rules are the same ones that we covered when we were at the convening in January. So please practice respectful listening, respectful talking. You'll remember that phrase, wait, why am I talking? I not use statements, so it's something I have to catch myself on regularly, but speaking from an I place. Remembering the principles of gratitude. So there are so many places that we could be today, but we're so lucky to be able to be on this virtual happy hour with Dr. Pinkett, and I'm so excited to hear what he has to share with us today. We also ask that you be present. Obviously, we're in all different places across the country right now, and there's lots of things happening around us, but we just ask for this hour that you're here to just be present as best as possible. To be honest, and again, going back to speaking from an I space, and also just to share and bring your full self today. We also ask that everything that happens in this chat room remain confidential. However, what I would say about that is that this will be broadcast so that other people can jump on this call as well. So keep that in mind, not to share anything too personal that you wouldn't want other people to watch or listen to when they join. We have some guests that may be joining us from the platform whose faces you might not see on the video. Also, literacy moment. If anybody uses any acronyms or words that you haven't heard before that you're not familiar with, please feel free to invoke a literacy moment and just jump right in. And then the last one is to just share, assume good intentions, and that people are coming from a good space and bring their full selves and asking questions from an authentic place and so on. So with that being said, really quickly, your hosts for today, my name is Mara. I know you all fairly well, I believe, and I will be your facilitator for this afternoon. And then we have Chanel with us here as well, and she will be our tech guru for this hour. And just a note for you all as well, Chanel is in DC and I am here in Boston, so we can't turn to each other if there's an issue while this is all going on. Feel free to message us here in the chat room if there's any issues for you that we can address. And then Chanel will be unmuting people for the discussion, or you can actually, you can unmute yourself when you need to speak up. Chanel, do you have anything to add?
No, we also have Madeline is on the line. She is our tech change who will be helping us early on in case we have or experience any technology challenges.
Hi, Madeline.
Hey.
Okay. And without further ado, this is kind of tough to be able to assign to everybody, but I'll just go down the line for asking for introductions. If people could share their name, their organization or affiliation, and also their location. I'll start off with Amy and then move to Bettina, Joelle, Brianna, and then Thomas.
Okay, I'm Amy Boyer. I'm with Insight Garden Program, and I am on this call in Winters, California.
Great.
I'm Bettina Bird Giles. I'm with the Bethesda Life Center in Birmingham, Alabama.
Joelle,
Can you hear
are
me?
you on mute? Yes.
Okay. I'm Joelle Robinson. I don't want to say who I'm with because I don't want to be here, but I'm in Washington, D.C.
Great. All right. And Rihanna?
Hi everyone, I'm Rihanna Anderson with the University of Pennsylvania.
My name is Thomas Cujo. I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm a geriatrician at Johns Hopkins.
Okay, thank you all. And really quick before we jump right in, just to share with you all a little background about the purpose of today. So we're hoping that everyone will be able to explore how they can search inward to understand what motivates them and those around them to approach the work and other areas of life with a renewed sense of fulfillment, passion, and purpose. And in terms of learning objectives for today, we hope that by the end of the session, everyone will be able to understand the types of motivators, discover your own personal and professional motivations, and also learn how to use your motivators effectively. So without further ado, Dr. Pinkett.
Hey, greetings everyone across the country and through Google Hangout. It's good to be here. Thank you for the introduction. Excited to be a part of this conversation with culture of health leaders. My organization is BCT Partners. I am located in New Jersey, not as warm as California. So shouts to those on the West Coast and anybody else who's got sun coming through their window. I don't, but I wish I did. Nevertheless, I am really excited about this topic around passion, no pursuit, and leading with your heart in mind. It's a topic that is passion that I have a lot of passion around. So I'm excited to talk to the topic. And let me just begin by saying this. If I think about my own life, and I'm sure we all have our stories of how we arrived at the work, even the young lady who didn't want to say who she's with. Even there's a reason how you arrived where you are as well. But if I think about my experience growing up, when I was a kid, I tried to sell lemonade. And that sounds really cliche, but I tried to sell lemonade, and I set up my lemonade stand at the side of a highway in my neighborhood. And I didn't sell any lemonade because the cars went by so fast and they can't quite stop on a highway that it didn't quite work out as I had anticipated. But then I also tried to sell my toys to other kids in my neighborhood. And my mother found out that I was trying to sell the toys. She said, "You can't sell the toys." I bought the toys. And she said, "If you're going to sell the toys, at least give me a cut of the sales." I said, "No, you can't get a cut." And she said, "Okay, well, then guess what? Your entire toy store is shut down, young man. Shut it down, shut it down." So then I got to college and I tried to sell candy, resell candy. So I've always been involved in doing something that has to do with, you might call it sales, you might call it marketing, some might call it a hustle, some might call it a side hustle, whatever you want to call it. I've always had it. But it begs the question, what drew me to do that? And I believe the answer to that is passion. If you ask me for a simple definition of passion, I believe the simple definition of passion are the things you're naturally drawn to do. The things you're naturally drawn to do, things that people don't have to make you do it, things that you get excited about doing, things that you just naturally decide or choose or find yourself doing. Now, here's where it gets interesting. If you asked me when I started college, where do you see yourself when you graduate? My answer was, I see myself working for somebody else. And that's not a bad answer. If I were to talk to a young person and say, where do you see yourself 4 years after college? And they said, I see myself working for somebody else. I said, that sounds like a good plan. You're going to get a job, be employed, and earn an honest living. But if you listen to my story of where I started, that's not the answer I would have expected. I'd expected the answer to be entrepreneur, salesperson, marketing person, side hustle guy. I mean, something along those lines. But that isn't how it panned out. And what I came to realize later in my life, which I wish I had realized earlier in my life, is that I should have been guiding my career and my decisions by passion. That passion should have been my guiding light from day one. In fact, it wasn't until I got to college that a friend of mine who I grew up with, who just so happened to go to the same school, he started a business. And it wasn't until I saw him, a young man, a young African-American man, in fact, who looked like me, who I could relate to, that seeing him as an entrepreneur made me finally say, if he can do it, why can't I do it? And so while I'm not here to talk about entrepreneurship or starting a business, and I'm here to talk about passion, I think my story is a great story of one that typifies why passion is so important and how passion for me has led me to a career, a life of fulfillment, and one that I believe reflects the blessings and the gifts that God has bestowed upon me. So if I begin with that definition of passion as the things you're naturally drawn to do, it begs the question, as you ask yourselves, what are the things that you're naturally drawn to do? Let me ask you a couple of, we'll call them leading questions that might lead you to think more deeply about what you already know to be your passion, or maybe even think differently about what you think is your passion. So here are the questions. What are the things you just love to do? What would you do if you didn't get paid, if money was no object? Now, I asked an audience of high school students last week, what would you do if you didn't get paid? They were like, nothing. I'm like, you're missing my point. There's got to be something you would do if you didn't get paid. What are the things you were naturally drawn to when you were a child? Therein lies my example. I was always drawn to selling things. What would you do if you knew you could not fail? What one thing do you dream about doing that you've never told anyone? When you were young, what did you just know you would grow up to be? And here's my favorite question, the last question. What would you regret not having done if your life ended today? What would you regret not having done if your life ended today? Somewhere in the midst of answering all of those questions lies the answer to your passion or your passions, recognizing that it may not be one passion, maybe multiple passions. And for me, I have had a passion for entrepreneurship. I've also had a passion for technology. And so today I essentially run a technology business. I've been able to combine multiple passions into a career, into a life, into a profession, as it were. So for my last book, I interviewed dozens of accomplished individuals, people who reached the pinnacle of their industry or their field. I interviewed CEOs of Fortune 500 corporations. I interviewed executive directors of nonprofits. I interviewed nationally recognized journalists. I recognized leaders of civil rights organizations. I interviewed civil rights leaders, religious leaders, journalists, business people across an entire spectrum of professions. And I tried to understand for my last book, what have been the guiding principles for their success? And how have they been able to achieve that level of success and not lose a sense of who they are? That was the premise of the book, along with my co-author, Jeffrey Robinson. Let me tell you a study that we came across in writing the book. The study found that if you look at people who've reached the top of their careers and people who desired to reach that level, the executive level, you might call it, and they hit a wall, they hit a plateau, and you compare the two groups, the ones who made it to the top and the ones who plateaued, and you compare the two groups, here's what you find, that the ones who made it to the top had fewer promotions than those who hit a wall. Now think about that. In fact, let me flip what I said on its head. The ones who hit a wall, the ones who plateaued at, say, entry level or mid-level, they had more promotions than the people who reached the upper levels. Now, I don't know about you, but that to me is counterintuitive. It is contradictory. So how do you reconcile that? So one of the interviews we did was with a gentleman named Don Thompson, who at the time was the chairman and CEO of McDonald's. So I have an excerpt from Don's interview here in front of me. I want to read it to you. So here's what Don says, and this is the answer to the question, how do you make it to the top but have fewer promotions? Or how do you hit a wall and have more promotions? So here's Don's quote. He says, I believe you have to love what you do. You have to really enjoy it to the extent you look forward to coming in every day or traveling to that city or being on the road or whatever it takes to get the job done. Because you can advance to a point very quickly where you'll find yourself miserable and totally unhappy, and you will come right back down the rungs on the ladder. What I've been able to do and been blessed to do is I've enjoyed every single phase of my career. In fact, there have been several opportunities I was given to advance that I declined because they did not tap into my passion. And so you have to enjoy it. You have to have passion around it. You have to enjoy it in the good times and the bad times. So what's the reconciliation of what I said a moment ago? That if you look at the folks who hit the wall, who wanted to reach the executive level and couldn't make it, they had more promotions. Why do they have more promotions? Because every opportunity given to them, they said yes to. Do you want this promotion? Yes. Do you want to advance here? Yes. Do you want to take this job? Yes, absolutely. Without no discerning compass for how to say yes or no. They said yes to everything. They ended up with lots of promotions, but little fulfillment. Whereas those who reached the upper levels, when an opportunity came, like what Don said, they stopped for a moment and said, no, does this opportunity really tap into my passion? Am I leading with my heart? And if the answer is no, then guess what? I'm good. I'll decline the opportunity. I'd rather wait for an opportunity that feeds my passion than to take an opportunity where all that glitters is not gold. And so Don said, no, I don't want that position. No, thank you to that position. No, I'm fine. I don't want to take that position. But then the next one came and said, you know what? I'll say yes to that one because I've got passion around that work. So I'll take that opportunity. And let me offer two caveats to that story around Don Thompson. First, what I'm not saying is the end all be all is being an executive. Like, that's not my message. So if the idea is that because Don became a CEO that his path is justified, like that's not the message, but rather there's something to be learned about how he's managed his career to still be fulfilled. Because the premise of the book was, how do you reach a level of success and not lose a sense of who you are, who you're true to? The second lesson, or caveat rather, is that when you think about passion, I'm not saying that there aren't going to be times where you accept an opportunity that you may not love completely, or that the job you're in, you don't love everything that you do. There are things that I do that I don't love. There are aspects of my career that I haven't had excitement about. But if I think about the guiding compass for my career or Don's career or all the folks I've interviewed, passion has been that guiding compass. I say to that, if there's no passion, there's no pursuit. If there's no passion, there's no purpose. If there's no passion, there is no point. So I'm a big believer, as you can probably tell, that if you think about how to manage your career, how to manage your life, the first and foremost question to leading with your heart is asking that fundamental, introspective, reflective question at each stage of your life, because it may change. What do you love to do? What are you naturally drawn to? And just like I was naturally drawn to lemonade and candy and toys, and now I don't quite sell lemonade or candy or toys. I sell slightly more expensive goods and services. But the point being, I'm doing what I love. And I imagine that for many of you that are listening and watching, that that's already the case for you. And maybe this hangout is just a friendly reminder, a friendly reinforcement to keep feeding that passion. Because when you find that passion, in the words of Oprah, and I'll close on this and we'll open the floor for discussion. In the words of Oprah, actually I'm gonna give you two quotes. The first one is from the great philosopher and the great scholar, Nicki Minaj, who says the following: to live doesn't mean you're alive. To live doesn't mean you're alive. And that actually is a quote from Nicki Minaj. I didn't make that up. But my point is, passion's what keeps us alive. Second quote from the great entrepreneur and media mogul, Oprah Winfrey, who says the following: when you love what you do, you will never work another day in your life. When you love what you do, you will never work another day in your life. Passion says you'll never work another day in your life. So again, great to be here to hang out. I believe they told me keep this in like 10 minutes. So I think that's my time, and we can open the floor for discussion and dialogue. Thank you, everybody.
Everybody jump right in. No one hold back. I don't have to go to a therapy session this week. That was great. Thanks.
Would you mind repeating the questions to ask yourself? I was trying to find a pen as you were writing, and I got, what were you drawn to as a child? What would you do for no pay? I'm obviously paraphrasing. And so I got those two.
Let me see if I can put this into the chat. Hold on a second. I think I can. Hold on, I'm gonna put the questions in the chat. Give me 1 second. I can't say I run a technology business and then get and then get played out by technology. So I just threw them to the chat log. You got every question I threw out there.
As soon as I figure out where the chat log is.
Oh, it's to the right of your screen, Bettina. And if you
Right.
hover over
blue
the left
box.
side of your screen, yep, there's a blue box.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Mom, turn the lights back on. I need the lighting.
Well, I just want to tell you that I wish that more people were given these tools. I'm a student of The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. I don't know if you're familiar with that resource, but that's how I found my career. And my career came out of nowhere after doing some of the activities through The Artist's Way. But The Artist's Way for some people is a little too a little abstract because it's very spiritual, and so it challenges some people's religious beliefs sometimes. So I think that there have to be different ways of delivering that message.
Mm-hmm.
And when I speak to young people, then I ask, instead of, and also learn this at a women's retreat, a spiritual retreat, what kind of person would you like to be, as opposed to what would you like to do? Because I have never held a job that was in the occupational outlook handbook.
Mm.
So often they were created for me, or they were careers that just weren't written. And sometimes following your heart, eventually, of course, it became a way that I could actually live. But at first, and in comparison to some of my classmates from UVA, they were like, what the heck are you doing? Because they were on Wall Street, or the things that people do that graduate from UVA. And I was working in I was more like Barack Obama, his friends graduating from law school. They're like, what are you doing? I'm community organizing.
Yeah.
But eventually, then you catch up with the rest of the world. But I would say that is not how we are raised. And for one of my friends on the panel who remain unnamed, but she'll understand this, that sometimes when we speak of things, we speak of them in a Eurocentric, from a Eurocentric perspective. And for me, I was the first generation to go to a predominantly white school, and there was an expectation of predominantly white college. And there was an expectation that you would do certain things, and you would make a certain amount of money, as opposed to doing what you love to do. But now at age 49, my parents and I have come to a really good place about how I ended up using my skills and degree. So thank you for writing this, and I want to make sure that I share it with others.
No, you make some really great points, and the idea of never working another day in your life, and even your story around expectations that people can place on us. I want to make 2 points on that. The first is, when I finished my education, and I have an MBA and I have a PhD, so I had a lot of folk who graduated with me who took a lot of well-paying jobs, Wall Street, finance, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When I finished up my last degree, I ended up working in a garage, and that's actually being generous to call it a garage. It had no heat, it had no air conditioning, it had squirrels in the ceiling. We paid $200 a month in rent, and we had to renovate the space because it had no ceilings and it had wood floors with no carpeting. I think that year out of my last degree program, I earned roughly about $24,000 that year, and that was when I got paid on time. For most of that year, I didn't get paid on time. I ended up getting $24,000 by the end of the year, which was probably like a month's take for some of my classmates. And people are like, yo, dude, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, I mean, you could have done all these different things, and you could be doing so much better for yourself. You are broke. I mean, you're broke, and your office is a mess, and you go to work with a hat and gloves and a scarf in the winter, and you keep it on when you get to the office because there's no heat. But you know what? I had absolutely no second guessing about following that path. I mean, I absolutely loved the highs and the lows. Not to say it was easy. I'm not saying it was easy. I'm saying it was what I wanted to do. And despite all the people who said, "What are you thinking?" and "That's crazy," and "You're wasting your time," passion kept me focused to say, "Hey, this is the path that I pursued. And if things don't work out, that's okay, because this is what life's about. Life's about going for it." Second thing I'll say is this idea of what I call success versus greatness. I define success as what you do for yourself. I define greatness as what you do for somebody else. I believe the world challenges us. Oftentimes, friends and family expect us. The world invites us to be successful. How much do you make? What's your title? What degrees do you have? Where'd you go to school? What kind of career are you pursuing? And there's all these stereotypes of what success looks like. But I believe if we can shift that focus over to greatness and say, we're not chasing after what we do for ourselves, but what we're chasing after is what we can do for others, that we're blessed to be a blessing to other people, that the gifts we're given are meant to be given to the world, and that's the mission we're placed here for in the first place. We can shift that conversation from success to greatness. We kind of remove the pressure that many of us experienced. Maybe some of you didn't. I know I did, of saying I got to go a certain path because that path is traditional, it's expected, it's lucrative, it's et cetera, but rather what's the path that's most fulfilling? And I believe that part of that is, how am I in service to other people? So I took a lot from your story that really took, I really take to heart. So thank you for sharing.
Randal, I have a question for you. How, or do you think you can only, if you have multiple passions, do you think you can only focus on, or should only focus on one passion to create for this pursuit? Or what do you do if you have multiple ones?
Another good question. So I'm also a believer in what I call the power of and, as opposed to the tyranny of or. The tyranny of or is that you got to do this or this or this. The power of and is that you could do this and this and this. And when I speak to young people and I talk about passion, I say, hey, you may have and I talk about it two ways. I talk about passion and I talk about gifts. So let's break it down a little further. So passion are the things you're naturally drawn to do. Gifts are the things you're naturally able to do. Gifts are the things that people watch you do and say, wow, you do that well. That seems to come natural to you. How do you do that so effortlessly? Like, those are the things that are your gifts. And so the first thing I talk about is unearthing what are the things that you are naturally drawn to do, and exploring the world to figure out what are the things you're naturally able to do. Are you naturally a good writer, a good speaker, good at math, good at helping people, good at leading others, good at editing, who knows, good at building websites? Knowing that there are multiple gifts and likely to be multiple passions. And if you're willing to allow your imagination to be creative enough, to be engaged enough, almost to believe that the power of and is real and not just like a talking point for a Google Hangout, then I believe you can begin to not let the world tell you what is possible, but show others what you can make possible. And so it's saying, I have a passion for helping people. I have a gift in the law, and I have a gift in foreign languages. So I could become an international lawyer. It's saying that I have a gift for writing. I have a love for children and helping young people. So maybe I write children's books. For me, it was more specifically a passion for entrepreneurship, candy, lemonade, toys, and a gift in technology. I've always been good at math, good at science. I took computers apart, put them back together. I wrote software when I was a kid. Now, it wasn't because I wanted to. When I was a kid, and I told my dad, hey, Dad, I want a video game. He said, if you want to play a video game, you have to make the video game. I was like, really, dude? I got to make the game, really? He's like, yeah. So make a long story short, I learned how to write code at like the age of 9. So this passion for entrepreneurship, this gift in technology, math, and science Now I run a technology business. That's a long way of saying absolutely not. If you don't get duped by the tyranny of or into thinking if you've got multiple passions or multiple gifts, which you do, it's got to be one or the other or the other. Believe in the power of and, that it can be this and this and this. And let the world conform to you. Don't you conform to the world.
Thank you.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. My question was regards to pursuing these passions or trying to pursue your passions in the context of real life. I'm personally I have 3 kids and I have to feed them. And so some of the decisions that I've made have been to make sure that I'm aptly prepared to care for my family. I'm sure other people have other contexts which are pressures that influence how they make decisions about pursuing their passions. So do you have any comments on that?
Oh, absolutely. And for what it's worth, I got 3 kids too. So I understand the balance, we'll call it, between passion and practicality, between passion and bills, between passion and college funds. I get it. And here's what I would say. Much like I caveated the Don Thompson story and said, hey, look, it's not like we all run around in this fantasy world where everything we do is passion. We just, we live each and every day doing what we're passionate about. Like, that's not the takeaway from Don Thompson's story. And it's not a takeaway from my remarks today that we always have the luxury of allowing passion to be the end all and be all. But I will say this, I do believe we have the choice to allow passion to play itself out in our lives in ways small, medium, or large. So while it may be more practical for me to say, I got to go get that job, that's not quite all of what I want, but I've still got discretionary time. Even with 3 kids, I got discretionary time, right? And so do you. And so it's how do we fashion our priorities, whether it's fed on the job from 9 to 5, or where it's fed off the job from what I call 5 to 9, and maybe it's a side activity because we just enjoy it. You play in a band, you do, poetry slams, you tutor in the evenings, whatever that fire is, you're feeding it given the realities of when and how you can feed it. And maybe, just maybe, if you're feeding it from 5 to 9, there may be this glimmer of opportunity that says, I could actually convert this from an evening or weekend hobby or activity to either a career, or perhaps more practically, that the next position I pursue, it may give me greater insight to some of the characteristics I'd like to see in that next position, because I'm still exploring the world and what I love about the world and what I have passion for in the world. But it need not necessarily be the job that feeds the passion. It could be lots of other things. Coaching can feed the passion. Volunteerism can feed the passion. Side hustle can feed the passion. There's lots of ways to feed the passion that are beyond the job, but it's great also, of course, if there's aspects of the job that feed it too.
Can I ask another question? I don't want to jump anybody. If other people have questions. Anybody else have a question? Okay, I'll go ahead. So my other question is, like you, I've pursued doctoral work and a medical degree, and now I'm in a position that I can kind of look out and see what potentially are options. And so I'm in an environment where people have not necessarily done some of the things that I think I'm passionate about. And I'm trying to get advice from people about different things, but I haven't been effective in that. And so I'm trying to get a sense from you, or perspective about as you pivot from like academic settings to another setting, how do you effectively do that? How do you effectively get mentorship and advice on areas where the people in your current environment might not necessarily have?
No, another good question. So a couple of ways I think about that. First is getting back to your last question. If you're looking to pivot, I like that word pivot. If you're looking to pivot, what are the avenues you can explore to gain exposure and experience that are with low barriers to entry? So again, that gets back to volunteerism. That gets back to things like informational interviews, shadowing people, reaching out in ways that you're not looking for people to hire you, give you a job, pay you per se, but rather, look, I want to volunteer for, no, I want to pivot into marketing. I'm going to study up on my marketing, brush up on my skills. I'm going to volunteer to do a marketing project for a local community-based organization. I mean, who's going to say no to that? You know, I'm going to offer to work with a professor at a university in marketing around mentoring his students. You know, there's ways that you can get an entry point that has a low barrier to entry. And that's actually a good way to actually confirm that this is a direction that you want to go in the first place. Having done that, I think now the question is, when pivoting, how do you leverage relationships? Because you have the greatest credibility in the areas where you have history. You have the least credibility in the areas where you're trying prospectively. And if you look at the social network experts, you know, they ask the question, how do you effectively network? And there's kind of three kinds of networks that they talk about. They talk about what's called a sparse network, where people in your network don't know each other. You know, I know somebody in California, in Boston, in Florida, and they're all strangers. That's a sparse network. Talk about a click network or a dense network, where everyone in your network knows everyone in your network. So a family should be a dense network. Everybody in the family should know everybody in the family. That's a dense network. The third kind of network is called a borrowed network, where most of your contacts are borrowed through a second party. And what they find in network theory is when you're trying to gain credibility someplace else, like not when you're in some place where you're already known, a dense network serves you the best because it reinforces the relationships. It gives you credibility. It gives you skills. It grounds you. But when you're trying to pivot, a borrowed network serves you best. That if you're looking to get out of finance into marketing, find that one person you know in marketing, or the person who knows the person in marketing. LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, take your pick. It's finding somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody in the place you're trying to be, and then reaching out to them to help them be your entry point to introductions, to which conferences, which websites, which books, which whatever you need to be grounded in, so you can borrow their network, borrow their expertise, borrow their insight, help them to help you to not go down blind alleys and dead ends. And by borrowing all of what they've amassed, you're going to have a much higher likelihood, a much more successful way of pivoting into that new area. In other words, don't try to go it alone. Like, don't try to build credibility from scratch. Maybe it's doable, but it's not efficient. Efficient says borrow somebody else's network and you'll do much better.
I'm trying to borrow some of your network.
Where are you trying to go?
Hey, we have to exchange information.
All right.
Thomas, are your kids still in preschool?
Oh, yes, they are.
Because I found that during that, let's say my son was in preschool 4 or 5 years, I met more different people, but he was at UAB, so at a Research One university. But I met more people when my son was in preschool, more different kinds of people when my son was in preschool. And I actually am still getting contracts from the parents that I met in preschool. Mm-hmm. So don't knock out that kind of network since you still have small kids.
Mm-hmm. That's right. That's absolutely right. And the fact is, once you leave school and go to work is really the only place where you have the possibility of regularly meeting someone new, unless you are involved in whatever way in your community, whether it's your kids at their school, you volunteer to do community cleanups, you're hanging out at the soup kitchen, whatever it is. Like there's very few avenues once you're out of school to make new contacts. Although social networking is changing that a bit, but those are oftentimes not physical geographic contacts. Those are geographically dispersed contacts. Sometimes they get brokered locally. But the point is, Every relationship has the potential. And if you're familiar with the other theory of social networks around the strength of weak ties, the strength of weak ties says that your most valuable contacts are your weakest ties. The people who you know the least had the potential to do the most. Now, why is that? Because the people you know the most tend to know the people you know. And because the people you know tend to know the people you know, they tend to know the same things that the people you know. Are you with me? So the people that you know the least tend to be in places that you don't know or are not connected to. You know, it's that person that you went to high school with who moved to the West Coast, who you might check in with 2 or 3 times a year. They're seeing things out there in their work and their life that you're not seeing. And the people that you know aren't seeing. So when they say, hey, you know what, I was thinking about you, they're looking for a new director of, of development out here. That's an example of a weak tie at work. So people you meet who are acquaintances at school, in the community, on your job, who you may have loose connections to, believe it or not, those weak ties are often your strongest connections or most valuable connections.
What do you do to keep those ties alive or fresh so that you strengthen them?
You know, social networking is a blessing in that regard. You know, before LinkedIn and Facebook and this whole suite of tools, the answer was an occasional email. This sounds crazy to the young people I speak to, a phone call, like a phone call to check in and see how folks are doing. I mean, now it's get them plugged into your social network, and you do 2 things. You update folks on what you're doing. And that doesn't mean just updating your status or your profile, but updating them on what you're doing. And then also keeping yourself apprised of what they're doing, which means it's really spending the time to care about what's happening in others' lives and taking the time to share with what's happening in your life. And you'll send them a message. Congrats on the new job. I heard you're going to be a father. Heard you got a promotion. That's fantastic. No, it's just keeping the contacts alive and meaningful. It's not about what can you do for me, what can I do for you. It's about how can we just be supportive of each other.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hello?
Yeah, I got a question coming for Joelle, but go ahead and ask yours. Joelle, I'm coming to you soon, so get ready.
Oh, okay. This is Rihanna. Hey, everybody. So this isn't exactly what I know your topic is on, but as you're saying it, it's making me think about what's happening, I think, with a lot of my work, which is that I'm a, quote, expert in this, in this lane. So I have research, I have practical knowledge on it, and I'm trying to write, I'm trying to get some blogs, some articles out about this thing. And yet the way that social media has been working lately is that anyone can be an expert in anything. And if people happen to tap into the right network, they can go viral. And now people have more access to what they're writing versus what an expert might have. So again, I know that social media isn't what you're talking about per se, but it is a type of network. And so do you have does anyone have any thoughts on ways to maintain your expertise and assert yourself in ways that can help folks who otherwise are kind of relying just on a witty sense of writing or inclination?
Yeah, I want to invite others to certainly jump in and answer any of the questions. This is a hangout, so I'm hanging out, but I'll offer my thoughts. I've found that, and I'm actually both amazed and impressed, that people who have passion around particular topics, who are going to blog regardless, who are going to write regardless, who are going to post regardless, they're the ones who seem to become the influencers on social media. And not that you are saying this, but it's not the folks who are desiring to go viral. But how can I find the formula to go viral? But rather they're saying, you know what, I just love cooking. I love cooking. So I'm blogging on cooking. I'm posting recipes. I'm telling people, I'm shooting videos when I'm tasting foods. This is fantastic. You gotta try this recipe. And they're like, you know what? I don't care who's watching. It's like that whole quote about dance like nobody's watching. No, blog like no one's reading, write like nobody cares, and post like anyone could care less. And it's those folks who end up having 40,000 followers. I'm like around cooking, or even better, around like cooking from a particular country. Or they're like, I'm blogging and writing and posting on, the best place to find, oranges. I mean, like crazy things. Like, so point being, I think if passion's the guide for what you're driven toward, the benefit is the following. It's not work. It's not going to feel like work, but it's likely there are others who share that same passion that you do. And if you don't find them, they're going to find you. And that begins to build your base, begins to build your name, begins to build your credibility, build your reputation, et cetera. So I think it does go back to passion, to your question. I'm not a social media expert, so there may be others on the line who can offer specific tips around social media. But I'll let that, contribute to the conversation, to the hangout, and let others chime in. Please, others chime in. There's no chiming. And my chime may be the only chime unless someone's on mute. I'm gonna pause for one more moment, and if not, we'll keep it moving.
Rihanna, do you want to repeat your question one more time in case anybody forgot it?
Sure. And I think to clarify too, it's one thing if you're passionate about food. It's another thing if you're passionate about things like racism and the information that's out there is incorrect. And so you want to like make sure that people aren't spreading misinformation, and you're like this researcher and people are, I'm entertaining, I write well, and it's hard to just crack into this space where people just come off the dome and write whatever they want and have some funny line, and they're able to have this network around something that they're not necessarily passionate about, and so that's I think the frustrating part, that I'm so passionate about it and I think that I know a lot, and it's really just hard to compete with people who honestly do want to get viral. Like that is their purpose in writing these things. It's not to live in this passionate space, from what I can tell. So anyway, the
Make
question.
Some funny memes.
I'm sorry.
Make some funny memes.
Yeah, that's like I know yeah.
Well,
that's another struggle though.
I'll just add, I have two friends who have recently kind of blown up a little bit. One is a guy who I think does ESPN Undisputed, and so he was like I think what I'm taking away from this conversation: continue to do what you're passionate. And to comment on your question, basically, one guy has like blown up writing in sports. He wrote in sport for our sports section in our college paper. He continued to work, and I think he took like crazy jobs that weren't paying much, but now he's eventually blown up. So I think what I'm hearing from this conversation is sometimes it takes time, but I think over time, if you continually are trying to disseminate your work or the truth about your work, eventually people will pick it up. It may be years, it's been I think 7 years before this guy blew up. He just interviewed Chance the Rapper and this basketball player for his work with Undisputed, and he's getting a lot more press. But it's only come after like 7 or 8 years of doing this type of writing, where he's talking about the intersection of sports, race, and music. So,
yeah, and let's keep it real. We live in a very noisy, crowded media environment where it's hard for anyone to get a message through all the noise, and so it's a matter of, I think, preparation and opportunity. You can control the preparation. That is, you can find the passion, work diligently. I appreciate the point you just made a moment ago. Is that Thomas? Yes.
Yeah.
I appreciate Thomas's point around the patience, putting in the time, putting in the effort. That's the preparation part, and then the opportunity is there's this opportunity space, whatever the issue is, of what message and what voice strikes the right chord at the right time. And sometimes it is the voice that is seeking to go viral. Sometimes it's the voice of authenticity, of being an expert. Sometimes it's the voice that is more controversial. Sometimes it's the voice that's more reassuring. And it's not science, it's art. So keep working the preparation with the expectation that the opportunities will come. You know, I'm a big believer as well that, you know, if you keep at it and you keep at it and you keep at it, that good things, progress comes. And if you don't see progress, it's a sign at some point to say, is this the right space for me? Is this the right space for me?
Rihanna,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I have a cousin who is an attorney, and he is on the news quite frequently. If something comes up, then he becomes the person that they call on, and he's friends with all the other kind of celebrity attorneys. But he got an agent, and the agent put him on. And same with some other people. And I think that your show that you have online, there may be a friend. I used to, when I left my job, my high paying job, because I, for whatever reason, decided I wanted to be a more active mother. And my husband was commuting in one direction, I was commuting in the other. My son was in Birmingham with my mother. And so I left my job. So I started bartering with people because I had a certain skill set, and like I didn't have an office anymore. I wasn't tied to a university. I mean, at first it was really problematic because I'd been with, you know, either in college, in graduate school, or working for universities for most of my career. And so I started bartering with people, and then I'd start speaking. Like Friday, even though I like to get paid when I'm speaking, I'm bartering with a friend. She's doing something for me, and so I'm speaking at this event on next Friday. So I just started bartering with people because despite the fact that I'm a talkative person, I'm still an introvert. And so a lot of times I would talk to people and tell them kind of what I do, which I'm an interculturalist. Well, why did my husband, most of my major contracts I got because of my husband, who I really didn't realize could articulate to people exactly what I did, but he was less wordy and detailed. And I ended up with a contract with the Air Force right after I left my job for 9 months of defense contracting. And it was because he was able to kind of articulate. So finding, and he's not I'm looking at what you're calling these networks. He is my inner family network, but he has different, because he's in a different fields and he was raised in a different atmosphere. He has networks differently from mine, despite the fact that we've been married 27 years. So he still has, and he works in another city. So he has people, you know, that he can go to. So relying on networks that aren't obvious, like my best friends, my inner circle, my family, but kind of going out to other people has helped. But sometimes it's hard if you are an introvert and you don't want to sit there and talk to strangers and work the room. But bartering, the agent, and I think your web show is going to explode. And so if you get somebody to represent you with your show, when you get it, I don't know if it's where you want it to be or not. I think it's great as it is. But finding somebody that's actually going to represent you and do those things, those marketing kinds of things that you don't have time to do. And depending on your personality type, it may or may not be what you like to do.
Rihanna, I was just going to say too,
Hold on a second. Hey, Maura, you're on mute.
Thank you.
Maura.
Okay, I'm back. Your passion really comes through when you talk about what you do. And I feel like that's also an opportunity to take advantage of, even though it's not necessarily in the social media network of things. Because, you know, when I met you and I learned about what you were doing, I went back to my space here in Boston and I emailed, you know, the link to your office and what you do to people that I know. You know, so sometimes it can happen in subtle ways where maybe you don't see the impacts up front, but just your energy and your light that you bring to what you do spreads, but maybe you don't always see the impacts till later on, kind of like what Thomas was sharing.
Good deal.
That's really helpful. Thanks, guys.
All right, we're gonna go to Joelle. So Joelle, curious to know what do you hope to be your next move, next opportunity? Where do you want to be next?
So I mean, I want to basically do my own or do community participatory research or community action research. However, to Thomas's point, and to some of the points that Bettina raised, I don't want to be poor. Like, I need to transition in a way that's strategic. Like, and I have done, I'm very involved in the community. Like, I know I can do it. I just, one, similar to Rihanna's, two, need to, I guess, figure out like what that narrative or like personal story or brand is, and how to, I don't want to say sell it, but in a kind of in a way, sell it. But at the same time, like, yeah, I can't live on like $24,000 like you did. Like, no, I'm not doing that. Period.
You keep it real with me. I'll keep it real with you. That's all right. So I'll just say this. So I first of all, I run a consulting firm. Among the things that we do research and evaluation. We do technical assistance and training. We do some information technology. We do some data analytics. So I've been in the kind of research and evaluation space for almost 20 years. And there are lucrative opportunities to do participatory action research, to do participatory research. I find that it is with either firms like ours who contract for research with large foundations and with federal agencies and maybe some state agencies, or it's the big nonprofit think tanks, and so I can respect and appreciate and relate to the desire to not want to be broke. Like, I'm with you. I've been there and done that, and I'm not trying to go back. But I think setting, having that as your criteria, gives you a certain cadre of organizations that you need to be targeting aggressively to know what they're looking for, to build those relationships, and maybe not now, maybe later, but kind of really grounding yourself in where are the well-paid opportunities to be a researcher, because they are out there. They are out there.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think that also I realize that to the extent possible, I want to do research that affects me and my community and things that I care about, not what, whoever is like, oh, no, we want to look at such and such. And then they contract that out. Like, there's plenty of folks that do that. So I think, to me, that's kind of like, and not to say that there isn't funding to or opportunities to support kind of ground up approaches, but that's kind of where I'm at and what I'm thinking about. And yeah.
Okay. I'll just add that, I think some of the firms that do it well are the firms that bring in researchers like yourself who care about certain issues, and they operate almost like academic departments where researchers basically opt in on which opportunities the firm will pursue. If it's not an issue they care about, they don't go after it. If it is, they put their resources behind it. They go after the work, and then they're offering their expertise. And so, I don't want to plug my firm, but I'm gonna plug my firm. Check out bctpartners.com. Check out what we do and keep us on your radar, please. Keep us on your radar. All right. Others, I think we got about 5 minutes left. There was a question that was sent through the chat log around how am I raising my kids to find their passion. The easy answer is I'm trying to figure it out. That's the easy answer. The perhaps more articulate and sophisticated answer is I'm asking them the same questions that I asked everybody at the beginning of this hangout. And maybe not in those words, but certainly in those deeds. I'm asking them, what do you love to do? I'm watching to see what they're naturally drawn to. And my kids are very different. My oldest is 21. He loves to cook. My middle child is more artistic, loves to do drama and dance. My youngest seems to be a mix of either the arts and athletics and kind of writing. So I'm feeding that, and she's 9, so we got a little ways to go before we have to make any hard decisions. But I'm trying to rally around the things that they seem to love and balance that out with the reality that if this is the things we're going to do, you're going to have to work hard at it. Like, this is not, what do you love to do? And you don't feel like going to practice today. This is what you love to do, and you're not down with putting in the extra hour to get ready for the performance or for the competition or for whatever it is. So it's kind of an iron fist and a velvet glove. The velvet glove is, what do you love to do? The iron fist is, if we're going to do it, then we're going to do it. We're going to work hard at it. We're going to perfect it. We're going to honor it. We're going to put in the time and the effort and the sweat equity to be good. And if that's not what you want, we can pivot or shift or find another. But rest assured, you will be working hard on something, so you can tell me what it's going to be. It's not going to be sitting around. That's what it's not going to be.
Were you raised by post-civil rights parents? Because it sounds like you were also.
I think my parents were kind of right on the heels of that civil rights, and that's kind of how they pulled me through. Get up, get up and find something to do. Yeah, because you're not gonna be sitting around. You're not gonna be sitting around.
In the last couple of minutes, does anybody have any additional questions or just thoughts to share?
I'll share just a bit. I think these questions that have been posed are really helpful to the culture of health leaders, folks, like generally. So I would say, like because we're together for 3 years and because we are going to be looking at our development of leadership, it would be really neat to kind of have these questions probably like once a year, and then have a way to compare them at the end of year 3 to see, if we've noticed any differences or if they remain consistent. But just getting a sense of how passion, since it drives so many of us, changes over 3 years and what it might look like. So I think that they're great questions, and thank you for posing them and sending them in the chat.
This is Bettina. I wanted to ask if Joelle, my season in life at age 49 and 27 years of marriage, and really I could have retired if I'd remained with the university, is to build the social capital of other people. So I work a lot with my 20-somethings and 30-somethings, and the way that I became the culture of health leaders, because we were originally applying as a team, but they're artists and a whole bunch of things happened. So anyway, so I ended up having to apply as an individual. And so I have been a mentor to people because I've had great mentoring and I've had great sponsors. And if you kind of look at the difference between a sponsor and a mentor, I've had great sponsors, and we can talk offline about how to identify that person if you're in an entity that doesn't set that up for you. And so I'm able to leverage for other people, but just because of the amount of work I've committed in this community, if there's somebody that wants to do something that's outside of what I do, then I can back them at this point in time. And that's my season of life. And I think you need somebody like that in the DC area or wherever you want to go. I don't know where you're originally from or where the things that you want to do might exist, but we can talk offline about kind of identifying, because I've had people to contact me and say, hey, can you mentor me? Or I've heard about you from other people. And sometimes I don't have time, but I might know someone, or I might not be in that field, but sometimes people just like people that are going to listen to them. Mm-hmm. So let's talk offline.
Okay. That'd be good.
As women, that's a totally different issue than for me.
Exactly. You already know that's where I was coming from with it. I can't go down the scale now. We gotta keep going up.
Well, thank you all. And I know that we're at time now, so we can definitely continue this on the platform, this conversation. But thank you so much, Dr. Pinkett. This has been incredible. I know it gave me life, and I'm going to go off into the world tonight and have a lot to marinate on. And thank you all for joining us today. If anybody has any additional questions, you can always email us or chat again on the forum. And otherwise, thank you so much, Dr. Pinkett. I really appreciate it.
No, thank you. And for those that are still connected in the chat log, the questions I posed were taken from a book or adapted from a book called Life Makeovers by Cheryl Richardson. I put that in the chat log. And then the book that I referenced by me is Black Faces in White Places, 10 Game-Changing Strategies to Achieve Success and Find Greatness. So those can be potential references from today's conversation. Thank you so much for having me. Go out and show the world what passion looks like. God bless you and good luck. Take care.
Thank you so much. And to everybody, I just forgot one last thing. Please go on to the platform and fill out your evaluations. All right. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.